Good morning, everyone. My name is Jordan Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer behind Nonconformist Conscience. We have a full moon going down this week. And before this full moon occurs, which I will get into in a minute, we have Pluto stationing and moving direct. But throughout this week, we still have a Mercury trine Pluto conversation going down. So Mercury is in the sign of Virgo still. It's making its way back into Libra over the same spots that it was at or degrees that it was at during its retrograde cycle. So this trine to Pluto is retrograde right now, and it is in Capricorn. And so this is dealing with a lot of self-responsibility, self-accountability. This is really understanding the social dynamics and where we have social conditioning. And so with Mercury and this trine to Pluto, Mercury in Virgo is really about gathering the information and analyzing it and coming to a deeper understanding of what its meaning is. And because this started off, Mercury started off in Libra, it has a lot to do with the Libra dynamics. So it's really understanding and coming to a deeper understanding about our relational patterns and cycles and where we've been habitual in them. And it's about really taking responsibility and identifying this. And I went over this aspect more last week, but I felt it was worth mentioning. So on the 8th, Pluto is going to station and go direct at 26 degrees Capricorn. And Pluto stationed and went retrograde on April 29th of this year. So Pluto it's always retrograde about 6 months out of every year. And it's not as deeply felt as some of the other planets, like the personal planets, whenever they go retrograde. And that's because Pluto is so far away, right? It's the furthest out from our planet. And so when there is a station, oftentimes we can have an intensification of something come up for us, even with Pluto, especially if you've been consciously working on something. And this Pluto is only going to go retrograde one more time before it enters into the sign of Aquarius full time in the year 2024. So it's something to think about, and it's something to really consciously work with. Pluto in Capricorn is really about understanding the social dynamics and social responsibility and the role that all of us play within the societies that we're born into. And if we're looking at it on a soul level, we're looking at and asking and understanding why we chose this time to come in this state. Like I live in Oklahoma, all of these things as a way to further our evolutionary growth. And so there's a need to take responsibility and to learn self-validation and what true responsibility is within the social structures. So a lot of us right now are learning about our conditioning and whether or not that really, those values and needs that we've learned through conditioning really are in resonance with who we are on a soul level, and really looking at that inner content, because whenever Pluto moves into Aquarius, it's a 20-year period of revolution and rebellion. It's changing the collective conscious. And so there is a need for people who are consciously working with this energy to really look at the way in which they've been conditioned and to understand that if it's not in alignment with your soul growth, that there's a responsibility to change what this is and to mirror it back to society in a way that can be beneficial and helping the collective change the dynamics that are at play. We can see how this is already going down. If you look at the news and you watch what's going around the world. In Iran right now, there are women and men standing in solidarity with these women because they do not want to wear their hijabs anymore. And it's because that's a suppressive thing, which is a function of Pluto, suppression, right? That's more of the distorted version of Pluto and Capricorn. So there's, this social revolution going on there. And we, as citizens of the world, should all be standing up for this and talking about this. Just because it's not happening in our backyard, all of us should be talking about this. This is about women's rights. And to think that it can't happen here is, it's an illusion, because it can. So if you look at the women back in the 50s and 60s in Iran, they were living lives that were more like how we're living right now. So we can see all of these things happening, Ukraine and Russia. There are people who are being responsible and saying this isn't right, and they are choosing to, liberate from Russia, leave, go across borders, because they are not going to stand in solidarity with what's going on, and they are not going to be forced. They don't want to be forced to go and kill Ukrainians because they do not believe in it. And then you also have Ukrainians who are showing up and doing a social service by staying in that country while their families leave and choosing to fight for the right to live and to exist and to be sovereign. So if you think about this on a personal level, these are the things that we deal with when Pluto is in Capricorn, because there's a need to change the collective dynamics. There's a need for the powers that be to take responsibility and to listen to the people. And because that's not happening and all around the world, things are going down. So on a personal level, there's a need to really look at the social conditioning and where our values stem from, and to take responsibility. Capricorn is going to come into play later on whenever I talk about this full moon in Aries, and I'll get to that in just a second. So right after Pluto stations and starts to go direct, within, 24 hours or so, a little bit more than that, the full moon is going to occur in the sign of Aries. So if we've been working on our relational dynamics and really looking at where we might have had dependencies or created dependencies through the expectations of our needs being met, but these are really more conditioned needs. And if we've been consciously looking at this inner content through the Saturn square to Uranus, and Uranus being in Taurus, then this full moon is really about learning how to create a new identity. It's Aries. It's, it's subjective, it's instinctual. But Aries full moon needs the freedom and independence to be able to understand how to go about creating this new identity within relationships. So this can bring up a lot of needing to be, have freedom and independence in your own relationships. And this doesn't have to just be romantic relationships, right? It's opposing Libra. That's what a full moon is when the moon opposes the sun. And when we look at oppositions, we're looking at a need to come back into balance with something. And so this balance can be you know, really looking at where we've abandoned ourselves in relationship and lost who we are. We hear that a lot. We hear about, you know, I don't even know who I am anymore. I sacrificed myself so much in this relationship. It doesn't have to be on that grand of a scheme. For some, it can, but in order to have healthy relationships and to maintain balance and harmony, there needs to be an understanding that both are autonomous and that both can have the freedom and the independence to have experiences that are needed in order to learn more about oneself, right? And to be able to be instinctual about it. But with Aries, there's a deeper teaching of learning how to not be reactive, but how to be responsive. And how we do that is by really being objective about what is going on inside of us and the things that are coming up. And being an observer, like, I see myself, you know, getting angry again. And instead of just reacting to the anger, to really reflect on where it's coming from and the deeper tenderness that is there. Where do I feel hurt? Where do I feel like I need to be in flight or fight, right? That's what I think of when I think of Aries energy. And so to observe oneself creates a dynamic where one can be responsive instead of reactive, right? And so there's a need to come back into balance, and that's going to take being responsive. So this full moon also, we know with full moons, it brings up emotional dynamics to the surface as a way for us to work on them. So if someone is feeling like they're not able to be who they are at their workplace through the relationship that they have with work, you know, there can be anger that comes up, Aries. If one doesn't feel like they can have freedom and independence to have the experiences that they're needing to, and it's defying what their family of origin is saying is, you know, a conditioned thing or a value of some sort, one can feel anger or frustration at not feeling like you can act on this. This can also look like being in a relationship and meeting someone else's needs time and time again while abandoning yourself because of abandoning what your actual values and needs are. So there is a call to come back into balance of some sort. So when we're looking at Aries, especially Aries moon, there is a, you know, a new cycle. Even though this is a full moon, there's a new cycle going down. It's Aries, it's, you know, it's birthing something, and it deals with the identity of the subjective identity. And so for a lot of people right now, certain things can be coming up when looking at how your conditioning has played a role in a variety of relationships. One is going to look towards really two things and understand that the way in which we do things really, you know, stems from, you know, these things in our life, which are more Cancerian type of things, because Aries naturally squares Cancer. So we're really looking at the ways in which we were conditioned by family, or the ways in which our family met our needs. You know, some people, when they don't get their needs met by a parent in childhood, it's my dog, they will go out into the world and they will be with partners who mirror back that same dynamic. And so it creates this feeling of, I'm not worthy enough of having my needs met. It triggers that childhood wound, right? Well, Aries also squares Capricorn actually. And guess what? Pluto's in Capricorn. And the day before, hours before it went direct. And so that's really looking at the ways in which one feels like they can fit into society, or the ways in which that they don't really fit into society, but to take a responsibility about the dynamics that occurred in childhood, now in adulthood, that are preventing us from having meaningful, equal, harmonizing relationships. And so there is a call here with this full moon in Aries to really get to the bottom of social and childhood familial content as a way to really reformulate and recontextualize what these needs, values, and what gives you meaning is. This full moon is squaring its ruler, Mars, and Mars is in the sign of Gemini, and it's ruled by that Mercury that is trining Pluto. So there's this huge conversation coming up within this full moon of really being able to understand and have gnosis or knowledge about where all of the relational dynamics are coming up. And there is a need to reformulate and recontextualize what the needs are in an individual sense to create balance, instead of just projecting and assuming that someone else's needs are the same as ours, and having the courage to really voice what our needs are, right? It is Aries energy. It's this needing to have the courage to do that, to say, this is who I am. These are the things I'm understanding about myself and what my needs actually are. And I'm realizing they have nothing to do with what I was taught that they were. You know, that can be this dynamic for some. And so this full moon is really this opportunity to deal with and to understand the emotional content that comes up from where we felt like maybe we've checked boxes that we've been conditioned and given ultimate meaning to, that we're now realizing isn't what gives us meaning. We're not happy there. And so there's this courage that needs to come about to start this new cycle, this new birthing process of who we are. Who do I identify myself as? And understanding the deeper meaning and the deeper teaching of this is, a lot of times in society, we think that our identity is fully stemming from our family and how we were brought up and our social positions. And the thing that gets lost on people is that they get to choose what their identity is. And sometimes that means having to work through childhood wounding or societal wounding, and understanding and accepting that one is different and that that is okay than what is expected by mom, dad, brother, sister, work, society in general. And so this is kind of a great opportunity to continue this liberation process that we're all in, where we're recontextualizing what our values are. This is also a moment to really get to the bottom of these dynamics and to take personal responsibility on the journey that we are on an individual level. So the moon is also going to be opposing Venus, and Venus is in the sign of Libra. So this full moon is going to oppose Venus in the sign of Libra. I know I just stated it, but I want to state it again. Venus is about our relationship with self and our relationship with other. It's about being able to listen to oneself and to listen to another objectively. And so oppositions, like I said, are an opportunity to come back into balance. So questions to ask yourself are, am I abandoning myself in relationship as a way to meet someone else's need? Am I able to actually hear Venus, what someone is trying to ask for, by being objective instead of projecting what I think that they need? So there's a need to look at whether or not past experiences are creating a dynamic in any type of relationships that you're having where you're projecting your past onto others. And to really observe this, if this is happening, So that way, you know, you can better understand your values and what you actually need in relationship, whether that be at work or with friends or, you know, whoever. So I wanted to jump on here and talk all about this full moon and the things that are going down in the sky. If you want to know more about this week, I go into more detail about the other days, the moon's aspects. It's a little bit more technical. But if you want more information about this week's astrology, you can go to the webpage or the Facebook page. I will put a link in the comment section or wherever I'm supposed to put it on YouTube. So that way, if you're someone who's wanting to look at that, there's more information. I wanted to really dive into this full moon and the other conversations this full moon is having with planets, you know, instead of focusing on the other things of this week. So if you're wanting to know more, go ahead and check that out. You can go to the website. And I hope that you guys have a great full moon. I think that this is beautiful energy, especially for people who have been consciously working with astrology as a way to spiritualize or to further their relationship with self. This will be an opportunity to feel like one has some freedom from the chains of, you know, the past and the old way of being. And it's a good time to get fired up about being an autonomous human being. So I hope you all have a beautiful week, and I will see you back here next week.